Exactly. And this is kind of a good lead way in. And I was just as guilty of this literally as recent as about 3 years ago. You're doing something that is a bucket list item. What you do for a living, there are so many people out there that absolutely are extremely envious. They wish they could do what you do for a living. And the reality of it is, make no mistake, and I'm not going to speak for you, but I'm betting that you feel similar to this. Extremely grateful for the chance, even while I don't do it at the professional level, competition wise. This is all I do for a living now. I'm in also a situation where my wife her career has allowed me to chase this and try to build this business up and get it rolling. But you look at this piece here and extremely grateful to be in that position. But the reality of the situation financially and so forth is usually, when people get to pull that curtain back, they're shocked and they almost disbelieve the facts of what you see out there. And not to get down a rabbit hole too far, but one of the pieces, like you talked about travel, folks don't realize, one of the best pieces of advice I ever read is that if you want to be a pro angler or work that way, you better be ready to be a part-time truck driver. Yeah. And you better be really good at spending money, because you're going to do both quite a bit, and that's, I can only imagine, at that higher level piece. But where I was going with this is, and see if you agree, I knew I had it bad. I knew I was in trouble when the 12-hour practice days, the travel, in some cases, the completed tournament, don't sleep the night before too well because of all the, pre-tournament bugs in my head, compete all day in 90-degree, humid weather, and then literally load the boat on the trailer, clean everything off, pack it up, and drive 4 hours to get home. And when I realized, I love that, I knew I was in trouble, because I was like, oh no, I'm embracing the grind here, man. This doesn't even bother me. I mean, do you have to almost, you have to have that portion, right? It's a sixth sense, but you have to embrace that grind.
You really do. If you want to excel at this sport, almost everyone at the professional level, I mean, it's almost like I don't even know how to say it. I mean, if I took a friend out in the boat with me, they could make it half the day. But when you're out there, if it's a summer tournament and we're allowed to be on the water a half hour before sunrise and a half hour until a half hour after sunset. I mean, the late in the year when we're in upstate New York, you're talking about being on the water from like literally 4:30 until 9:30 at night. I mean, which is ridiculous, because by the time you get home, get some dinner, shower, and get to bed, you're looking at like 4 hours of sleep at night. Yep. And at that point, you're doing it for a week straight. Most people would say you're crazy. Like, you are crazy. And the thing is, I'm not on the water during that time going, I have to be out here to make me a better fisherman. I'm out there. Half of it is just because I truly enjoy it. Like, yep. What else would I like? This is what I want to be doing anyways.
Right.
But there's something wrong with me to say that. Like, most people, 99% of the population out there would say that's not fun. Like, doing what you're doing is not fun, especially if you do have somebody who questions like how hard it is. You put them through one tournament day. And that was one of the things I did early with my wife. I mean, we weren't even married at the time. I was fishing almost every weekend locally. And finally I was like, you know what? You're fishing one of these with me, because now you'll know when I get home at 6 o'clock at night why I'm passing out on the couch right away or something like that. And
right.
I mean, we finished up that tournament and we were probably 15 minutes into the drive home and she was sleeping in the chair next to me. I mean, it's just like, it is physically demanding from that standpoint. It's more mentally demanding than anything. Yep. But
that exhaustion is real.
It is a sport where, like you mentioned before, I am lucky to be able to make a career out of this, but I'm also doing it because I put in a lot of hard work to get where I'm at. And honestly, even where I'm at now is not like, I think I'm a good caliber fisherman. I think I've got great sponsors. I think I've got good sources of income flow through fishing. But, when you do rack up the expenses of doing it, you're looking at $75,000 a year in expenses.
Yep.
I mean, you gotta generate some good income to make some income. And, it's gotten really difficult to make a living just from tournaments. You have to have good sponsor support. And most guys have some other form of income, whether it's, YouTube or guiding or rental properties, something along those lines that aren't really time consuming when they get home, but they're building equity. Let's put it that way.
Revenue streams. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Got to have those, and that was it's a great piece here. That was one of the changes for us on my side, as I was, chasing the wrong thing in the very beginning. We moved our focus to the business side of things. And that was where we made the decision. Our focus will be to remain in a position to, provide services to the veteran support service side with our nonprofits that we work with. Fishing is going to have to take care of itself, because, to be honest with you, I'm not the smartest, bear, in the crowd, but I do consider myself, pretty well educated, 20 some odd years in the IT industry, IT management degree, master's in business administration. I'm no stranger to putting together business models and looking to see if they're successful or not. And I got to tell you, man, I worked for 5-6 years trying to find one to do what you do and be successful. And I could not find one that made me think, yeah, I could make a living at that. But it was like that extra piece of the revenue streams. That was the key, that's why, on some other podcasts out there, there was some mention, in the beginning, folks got, really upset with the Guggen Squad group and these, type of things. And unfortunately, man, the sport, I think, is showing now that this is where it's at. You know what I mean? And that's, one thing I will say about your YouTube channel, though, that I love the most. And it's one of the things I've sent so many people to watch videos that you have put out. Not only do you take care of guys like myself that aren't brand new to the sport, you provide, like the juice on some of these things. And it's in these little tidbits that you put together there that, if for those of us that are a little more experienced, we can pick up on that going, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. But you also have content there for the weekend angler, the weekend warrior, the recreational. Was that kind of by design when you first put your content together, or what was the goal there?
Man, it really was the viewers out there dictating a lot of it. When I first started, so for a year I had done just tournament recaps from videos that I had captured in my GoPro in our boat. We're dictated, or we're one of the rules of the MLF tournaments is we have to have GoPros running. So I figured at that point, I might as well make some clips and put up some tournament recap videos just for myself more than anything, because I used to write a lot of detailed notes when I'd get back from an event. Like, this is what I did. This is the bait, keep track of stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I don't need to do that if I can watch what I was doing. I know where I was at. I can see what I was using. And so I started doing that. And I did it for a year, and I think I had like 80 subscribers after that. And I went to a yearly team meeting for Bridgeford that we had, and Bridgeford's like, we'd like everyone to get more into the YouTube thing, because we see better marketing through that than a lot of other forms that we were doing. And so I was like, well, they want it, and they're my primary sponsor, so I'll start doing it. And Randy Blockett, who's on the team, was, at that point, he had been doing it for a year and had some decent success. And he was doing, short clips, some tips, some stories, some little bit of everything. And I kind of went towards the tackle tinkering aspect of it. Like, if you look at a lot of my early videos, like the first probably 15 or 20, a lot of them are straight tackle tinkering, because that's what I've always done. I've spent my winters tackle tinkering. I really don't ice fish. I didn't hunt because I would fish right up until ice up. And, I pretty much have done everything at this point. I build my own rods now. I've done I've done pretty much all my jigs until I started using dirty jig stuff. All the molding, I've done the painting, and I mean, pretty much everything at this point I have done. The only thing I haven't done is pour my own plastics. And, I think I could do that pretty easily at this point. I've watched enough World's Worst Fishing and shows like that to do it. But
$200 you get a complete kit, a YouTube video, and you're good to go, man.
Exactly. And, but so I was getting a lot of feedback on those videos where some tournament friends were like, that's a great idea. Like, I'm doing that. And then I would have a lot of comments from beginner level fishermen that are like, can you show me, like, I like what that tip is, but I don't know how to even get to that.
Right.
So then I was like, that's a good point. I know, like myself on YouTube, if I don't know how to do something, I go to YouTube, whether it's whatever, build whatever, fix something, that's what I do. And so I was like, a lot of people are probably doing that. So I kind of really did start mixing in a lot of beginner level tips. But like you mentioned, I always try to put some tidbits in there that just make it kind of pop for somebody. Like maybe they're a more experienced fisherman, but they didn't really understand why they were catching fish doing something they were doing. And I like to try to fully describe, even if it's something more elementary in our sport, I like to fully describe it and detail it and explain why it works in situations where it might work. And it seems like it's been a pretty good fix where, it satisfies the more experienced angler and it satisfies the beginner angler. And I feel like it's been a good little niche for me. And the channel has grown at a decent pace. I mean, I don't really have anything to base it off of. So I feel like it's done well. I'm satisfied with it, and my sponsors are quite happy, and I'm going to keep rolling with it.
Yeah, it's like I said, I can tell you it has been a staple, man. If anything new comes out from your channel, that is, I get a lot of notifications on my phone now that I'm doing the podcast and doing the outfitter store online. Yeah. So I get a lot of stuff flow through. But when your stuff does come through, it's like, okay, what is that real quick? Oh, we're going to save that. We're going to come back to that one later. But you're right, man. The YouTube thing is such a huge piece. Nowadays, I don't know. I was helping my son work on his car, changing a light bulb, and literally one of his headlights. And on this, in my day, it was pretty self-explanatory how to change a headlight. Good Lord, some of these cars nowadays, I mean, you got to take literally the entire front end off the car just to get to it. I've got a YouTube video up in the garage, next to my tools, and I'm hitting play and I'm watching this guy, do it so I can look underneath, and yeah, it's there. The digital era. In your experience with the social media piece, what's been the biggest challenge, engaging? I mean, we can talk about all day long on the social media thing, but in regards to just your career piece here, what's been the biggest challenge of that for you?
So, I mean, social media is really, to me, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I was late to the game because I didn't want to do it to begin with, because I never really, I guess, appreciated or liked it as much. I always kind of took the stance of, well, if I want to keep up to date with how my friends are doing, I'm just going to call them. But it got to the point where, I have sponsored contracts that dictate that I have to make social media posts. So I understand the importance of it. And, therefore I do what I need to do to market myself, really, is what it comes down to.
Right.
But having said all that, and I feel like social media has changed so much since, I don't know, 7 years ago, whenever I started it. I mean, it's just changed drastically. And the biggest hurdle, really, in my opinion, for it has been the algorithms. And what I mean by that is, I've got okay followings on Facebook and Instagram. I think I've got 10,000 on Instagram and 17,000 on Facebook. And if I make a post, it only goes to a handful of people.
Right.
Like, it doesn't go to 10,000 people or 17,000 people. It goes to a handful of people. And based on what they do, then it might get shared a little bit more. And the issue with that is it really becomes very difficult to reach people even. It was when I first got into it, which again was late to the game, it was easy to reach people because if I made a post, everyone who was friends or followers or whatever saw it. And at this point, nobody even sees it. Whether
Right.
they want to see it or not, they still don't see it. And it's become very difficult to reach people and very, very difficult to grow social media pages because of that. To the point now where, I mean, in my opinion, YouTube and TikTok, and I don't even do TikTok, but those are the two places right now where I think people should be putting their time if they're trying to grow from a social media standpoint. But it's gotten to the point where, with Instagram and Facebook, which is the same company at this point, I mean, the algorithm really just limits you so much that I kind of question doing it. But
yeah, it's, we made the decision to it just, and some folks think it's silly, but the Twitter piece just didn't make business sense to us.
Yep.
Our objective is to share data, and educate and entertain. That's what we're there to do, and so, we had to make that decision. That Twitter didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to us. Instagram, Facebook were the most, but now, we've actually started on the YouTube side, following in the footsteps of guys like you that have shown its value, and what can be done with that. So earlier, and I'm gonna kind of shift gears here a little bit, but you had made mention of something that I wanted to talk with somebody of your caliber at, and that is West Coast bass fishing. And by West Coast, I mean, I'm talking, I've always said this: Colorado is like the start of the West Coast, man.
Yeah.
If you don't think so, go back to like when I first moved out here, which was in the very early 90s. It started in the 80s, the California move into Colorado. Folks could sell off their homes out there at, $500,000 back in the 80s, coming by a house twice that size for, $200,000 out here.
Yeah.
Now you can't do that anymore. You're not even allowed to look at a lot without like $100,000 deposit. It seems like it's pretty crazy, but that, this West Coast, it's all this highland, extreme highland, high desert reservoirs. There's very little man-made, very little natural made, lake out here. You've fished the one Bass Open out at Mead many times. I was looking through your career there, and you've been out there and you've done well. I mean, out in there. That is like in my opinion, like the polar opposite to Wisconsin natural lake fishing would be Lake Mead. I mean, it's just a different bird. How was that transition so easy for you? Relatively speaking, how were you able to find success, moving to the West like that? Man,
it's a good question, because I really barely even practice for any of those events. And, I love Lake Mead. Like if you could fish on the moon, that's what I would describe it as. It's like that. It is such a cool place to fish. But I feel like the thing that's good about Lake Mead, or bad, is that the population of fish is not great. There's a lot of small fish. It's really tough to catch like a 2-pounder. And I like to cover a lot of water. I like to move and just keep cruising. And it's a good pattern lake. So if you kind of figure out where the fish are set up, which changes hourly even, I mean, but if you can figure it out, you can run with it a little bit. And I've had good success. I mean, the one year I think I finished, I'm looking at my trophy, I finished 15th. I should have won that event. I had the fish on to win that event. We had the first day was canceled due to high wind. I was sitting in third, I think, after the second day. And the third day I went out, I weighed 3 for like 7 or 8 pounds, which is good. But I lost like a 3+ pound largemouth on a topwater bait. And then I had a 2.5 pound class smallmouth that my co-angler, teammate, whatever, you fish as a team in that event, he had never fished before. And he actually, I'm not at all mad at him.
Sure.
This, but he had never fished before, and he brought his friend down who was dying of cancer, and it was a bucket list tournament that he wanted to fish. So he drove from, I think it was Washington, all the way down. Wow. And his buddy convinced him to fish because he just didn't want him sitting in the hotel room the whole time. And we went out, and he was great guy, but with that smallmouth, you know how smallmouth are, they're crazy. And he went, he'd never net before. He went and he ended up catching the crankbait on the outside of the fish. And we had a 2.5 pounder hanging on the outside of the net, and that one ended up getting away. So those two fish would have been easily enough to win that event.
Wow.
So, but that's fishing. That's how it goes, man. When they say it's your time to win, like when you win, it's your time to win. And I've had lots of close chances, and I've had multiple lost fish in those tournaments. So I just feel like it wasn't the time for me to win at that point.